Lewis David Julian was born on August 24, 1912, in the town of Frederick, Kansas, a small community in the middle of the state. He was born to his parents, Edgar and Blanche, and was the youngest of 4 children with 3 older sisters, Winifred, Bernice, and Edna. Edgar supported the family by working as a clergyman for the Methodist Church. Interestingly, documents show that the Julian family had a Jewish background. Lewis's family didn't settle in a single location for much of his early years as the family moved around Kansas throughout the 1920s. When the 1920 census was collected, the family was living in Walton, a small town north of Wichita. In 1925, the family was living in Mount Hope, Kansas, as Lewis started 7th grade at the local Mount Hope High School. He showed promise as a student, as he was reported to be on the honor roll for his academic achievement. By 1928, the family relocated one final time to Wichita, as Lewis began his high school years in earnest. During a commencement ceremony for graduating seniors, Lewis was one of the students performing musical numbers for the program. A year later, he put his musical skills to the test when he was part of a group of students sent by South Haven High School to compete in a variety of talent contests. For Lewis, he was in the boys' low voice competition. In May 1930, Lewis was part of the South Haven graduating class and was ready to begin the next phase of his life. While there were many options for higher education within Wichita and the state of Kansas, he decided to go westward to Washington State College. Despite the seemingly random decision to travel so far for college, Lewis did have a reason to attend WSC in the fall of 1930. His older sister, Winifred, was already a student in Pullman, so Lewis had help transitioning to a new college and state. Winifred was also more than willing to defend her younger brother, a trait humorously noted in the student newspaper. A reporter for the social section of the Daily Evergreen wrote that he saw Miss Julian saving the kid brother from a hacking. Despite this episode, Lewis was able to adapt to life at WSC and was involved in multiple extracurricular activities. Soon after the start of the semester, he tried out and was one of 22 freshmen selected to the Glee Club. Because of his low singing voice, Lewis joined the bass section. He later appeared on a studio musical program for the school radio station, this time singing baritone. In addition to being a talented singer, Julian also participated in school sports. As a member of the freshman tennis team, he displayed some prowess early after he easily won a contest against an opponent from the University of Idaho. For his efforts in tennis, Lewis was awarded a freshman numeral at the end of the season. In addition to his activities singing and playing tennis, Julian was a member of the Phi Sigma Kappa fraternity and was listed as a pledge in the yearbook. After concluding his freshman year, Lewis seemed primed to continue his time in Pullman as he was an active member of the community. Nevertheless, his first year at WSC was also his last. It is unknown why Lewis left Pullman after a single year, but he quickly returned home to Kansas. Lewis continued attending college, but this time at a college much closer to home. He transferred to the Municipal University of Wichita, known today as Wichita State University, and continued his education with little difficulty. Though information is scarce, the yearbook from his senior year showed that Lewis's interests and activities remained the same. He was a member of the Minnesota Chorus, a group that joined the orchestra in out-of-town programs. Lewis also played with the tennis team, and while he did not earn a letter for it, he was still listed with the team in the yearbook. Lewis graduated in 1934 with a degree in education, and while this degree provided him with ample job opportunities, Lewis had ambitions that would take him far from Kansas. Like many aspiring stars, Lewis moved to New York City for a chance at finding fame. He did not find immediate success, but still put himself in a decent position, as he found work with NBC as a page boy. It is unknown for how long he worked as a page boy, but Lewis finally got his big break in February 1936. A Brooklyn newspaper reported that Lewis was selected to be a vocalist with the Russ Morgan Band, saying that Julian, 1 week ago, was a page boy at Radio City. Now he's paging himself, and a dress suit is his new uniform. Russ Morgan was an accomplished composer and leader of big band groups, a popular style that involved large musical ensembles playing jazz music. Morgan saw success in the early 1920s and maintained his popularity well into the 1950s. The band also played on the radio with an extremely popular show called Music in the Morgan Manor, and it was on this program where Julian performed. Though Lewis was far from Kansas, his friends and family were able to see him sing, as the Russ Morgan Band was filmed playing music and shown in theaters. Incredibly, footage of Lewis singing in 1936 survives to this day.
And now we give you a recent song success, Rendezvous with a Dream, featuring our youthful baritone, Lewis Julian.
When the moon begins to beam, I'll have a rendezvous with a dream. Down beside a rippling stream, my heart will lead me to a rendezvous with a dream. Then you will say that you love me and hold me so tight. But like the stars up above me, you'll fade away in the light. But when at last my dream comes true, I'll have a rendezvous with you.
After months of recording sessions and playing in New York hotel dining rooms and nightclubs, Lewis finally returned home in September 1936. Within a year, he had gone from being a humble assistant to having a contract to sing with NBC. Still, he was far from the only family member with this success story, as his sister, Edna, was a popular singer in Wichita and also did radio work in New York. Lewis's quick rise was far from over, as he soon flew back to New York to continue living his dream. Once he returned to New York, Lewis continued to sing with the Russ Morgan Orchestra and had another opportunity to make it to the silver screen. In October, Morgan signed another contract to make another series of short movies featuring the band and Lewis as one of the vocalists. By February 1937, these films were distributed across the country. Lewis, now with the nickname Bud, was featured prominently in the picture, and the local paper declared that fans who recognized him thought he did himself proud. Coverage of Lewis's activities slowed after 1937, but he still maintained his success. In 1938, he was reported to still be a part of the Russ Morgan Band, in an article listing the achievements made by WSC students who had worked with the WWSC radio station. As late as October 1940, Lewis was still reported to be an employee of NBC and living in New York City. While his fame may have declined as the years went on, his rise to a singer in a prominent band was still remarkable. Though films of the Russ Morgan Band are scarce, some songs featuring Julian still exist and are publicly available on the Internet Archive. Lewis likely remained in New York until events in December 1941 changed his life and the world forever. The military career of Lewis Julian is only known from scattered sources that do not give a complete account of his experience. Nevertheless, it is likely that he enlisted into the Army shortly after war was declared. According to his sister, Lewis joined the Army from New York City and decided to become an officer. Because of his age and education, he was a typical candidate for the position, and he soon earned a commission as a second lieutenant at Fort Benning, Georgia. After leaving Fort Benning, it is unknown what camps he was moved to or when he was deployed overseas. However, Lewis was attached to the 168th Infantry Regiment of the 34th Infantry Division. The 168th was an Iowa infantry regiment, and part of other regiments from Minnesota and the Dakotas that comprised the 34th Division. By the end of the war, the division was famed for its combat experience. It first saw action in the North African theater after leaving Algiers. After stifling the German advance into North Africa, The 34th was soon sent to the Italian theater, where it spent 20 months in action. Lewis likely joined the unit towards the end of the North African campaign, but was fully involved as the Allies set their sights on the Italian peninsula. Though the Italian military offered some resistance, German reinforcements and the mountainous terrain made any advance over Italy extremely costly. The 34th Division arrived in full force at Salerno on September 29, 1943, beginning a war of attrition that was far more difficult than anything seen in North Africa. One regiment reported firing more artillery rounds in its first battle in Italy than it had during the entirety of the North African campaign. Despite the stiff resistance, the 34th Division made progress as it moved north to the Volturno River. The 168th Regiment and the rest of the division conducted 3 river crossings that were met with German machine guns, artillery, and minefields. While they were able to successfully cross the river, each attempt resulted in horrendous losses that were soon felt at home. In January 1944, the Wichita Eagle reported that Lewis Julian was missing in action, but provided little information on when or where he went missing. According to Julian's sister, Winifred, Lewis had been missing since November 19, 1943, squarely during the battles near the Volturno River. The Julian family sought more information from the government and other organizations, but was left without answers until November 1944. A report by the International Red Cross, citing information provided by the German government, revealed that Lewis died on November 24, 1943, due to wounds received during the campaign. Though many questions still lingered for the Julian family, they had finally learned the truth of Lewis's ultimate fate during the war. Lewis Julian was 31 years old at the time of his death. His body was recovered and laid to rest at the Florence American Cemetery in Italy. Years later, Lewis's name was added to the WSU Veterans Memorial, cementing his story among the many other WSC students who fell during World War II.